This isn't just about college football. This is a life lesson. Don't trust people who can never admit that they are wrong or have ever made a mistake. No matter what the topic, situation, whatever it is, if someone can never say, that was my bad, or I got that wrong, or you know what, I missed on that, don't trust them. Don't deal with them. Don't associate with them. Don't hire them. Don't make them your friend. Whatever the case may be, don't do it. And for as often as I like to tell you that I was right about certain topics, I think it's important to admit that when I was wholly wrong, and I was wholly wrong about Alabama in 2023. After they lost to Texas, I spent a pretty decent amount of time on the podcast talking about how Alabama was in deep trouble in 2023 because their quarterback play was so atrocious that it would not be fixed in 2023, and there were going to be major questions about the position going forward, going into 2024. Now, I'm a firm believer, I guess, to get that out of the way. Like, I think Nick Saban is coaching in his final game or final two games over the course of the next couple of weeks. I think Nick Saban is riding off into the sunset after the 2023 college football season is over. He's going to be an analyst on College Game Day. He's going to get paid a whole lot of money to do that. I think it's done deal, set in stone. I don't have I don't want to go into reasons why I think that. That's just what I believe, is that Nick Saban is going to coach in the Rose Bowl, and if they win, going to coach in the College Football National Championship game, and then that's it. So the idea that he cared about whether it got fixed in 2024 is really kind of null and void. But I spent a ton of time sitting here talking about how Alabama had issues at the sport's biggest and most important position, and they hadn't done a whole lot to fix it coming into the season. That they kind of knew, like, hey, we're not going to be very good at this spot, and didn't do a ton to address it other than kind of courted Sam Hartman. And so I thought it was a huge problem that against Texas and then against South Florida, like, okay, Alabama is bad at the most important position in the sport. Not like, not inadequate, bad at the most important position. Bad. And that they were staring a 9-3 season in the face. And I should give Nick Saban more credit. I should have given him more credit then, and I should give him more credit now, because the job that they have done to get to the college football playoff is nothing short of somewhat miraculous. Because the performance Jalen Milroe busted out against Texas and then didn't bust out against South Florida because they benched his ass. I don't know that there's anybody with half a brain that thought at that moment, in those moments, that Alabama was going to be a surefire 100% definitive college football playoff contender. And I think in a lot of eyes, maybe the favorite to win the national title right now. So the work that they've done is insanely impressive. And I think that if I'm going to sit here and tell you how right I was about Jaden Daniels was going to win the Heisman Trophy, and I told you that on August 31st, and that he was going to be joined in New York with Michael Penix Jr. and Marvin Harrison Jr., that I should also tell you when I got things horrendously wrong. And I got that one really wrong. I never thought in a million years that Alabama would be even close to the college football playoff, let alone would have beaten Georgia somewhat soundly, to the point where there are enough people that think that maybe Alabama is the favorite to win the title. Because the quarterback play was that bad. It was terrible. That they were running a high school offense against Texas. We're going to snap it to Jalen Milroe. We're going to have him run straight forward. And then when we do throw the ball, it's just going to be huck it up to somebody, either hope he catches it or you get a pass interference call. And if that's the offense you're trying to run against one of the best teams in the sport, things are not going to go very well for you. And you know what? They ended up putting it all together. There were, after 3 games, there were Alabama fans calling for Tommy Rees's head. And now at this point, I think he deserves a ton of praise alongside Nick Saban for what they have developed Jalen Milroe into, and the fact that they are even a contender to take home the trophy speaks volumes about the coaching job that they did in 2023. So I want to preface the college football playoff semifinal previews with that. Alabama had really no business being at this spot, and here they are. So the first game today, Rose Bowl, Alabama, Michigan. I think if you wanted to go position by position, you could. You certainly could do that. I think despite Jalen Milroe having leaps and bounds of improvement, is he better than J.J. McCarthy? No, I don't think so. But I've said this on the podcast before, that there's about once a year where Michigan is susceptible to a loss because they beat themselves. And it's part they beat themselves and part somewhat poor coaching decisions from Jim Harbaugh that lead to a loss. You saw it last year against TCU in the semifinals, that they beat themselves and they made some bad coaching decisions where they tried to outsmart the room in situations where, like, if you just play the bully ball that you've gotten to the semifinals with, I think Michigan beats TCU going away. Now, I don't think they beat Georgia in the title game, but I think they had every reason to get to the title game and didn't because they beat themselves. And so far this year, Michigan has not beaten themselves. Now, you can say that that is because they've taken the step from the inexperienced, learned how to win attributes, or it just hasn't happened yet. I'm leaning towards it hasn't happened yet. And I don't know that if they lose the Rose Bowl, that I don't know that it was that they lost it as much as Alabama wins it. I think you could argue that Alabama is a better team than Michigan is across the board. Now, is Michigan better in certain position groups? Yes. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't think that Alabama is going to win the game. I think they are. I think it's a low-scoring, kind of slug it out. You're going to see some punts. You're going to see some turnovers from both sides. You're going to see some situations where you get backed up behind the chains due to sacks, due to negative plays, because both defenses are pretty good. But I don't think I just think if you look at pathways to victory, right? Like, how do you get to the W? I think Alabama has more varied pathways to victory than Michigan does. I have a ton of respect for coaches who can go into a matchup and say, like, hey, we are not going to be able to do X, Y, Z. Like, we want to be able to run the football, right? Like, that's something that you want to be able to do. And sorry, my webcam turned on. Anyway, you want to be able to run the football, right? Or you want to be able, we're going to impose our will against so-and-so. And then there are the coaches that are like, hey, we're not going to be able to do that because they're really good at defending that. They're really good. Like, and so you have to draw up an alternate game plan. I have a ton of respect for the people who can go into a matchup and say, I would love to do X, Y, Z, but we're not going to be able to do X, Y, Z. So we have to figure out something different. And I think Michigan is somewhat in that boat, that they want to line up in 2 tight end formations or a fullback, and they want to push the ball down Alabama's throat. I don't know that they have that ability. So do they go into the game with the idea that they don't have that ability, or do they try it? And if they fail, how long does it take them to say, it just ain't happening today? I think that that's where they are susceptible, is they are going to continue to attempt it even after it's been proven to you this isn't as easy as you think it is. You might want to try something different. So I'm going to take Alabama in a kind of, and I realize like a 28-20 game is not a like low scoring game by many stretches, but in 2024 college football, I think it's a somewhat low scoring game, especially when you get to the heights that these games today are. So I'm going to take Alabama in like a 28-20 victory. It's not going to be pretty by any stretch of the imagination. It's not going to be easy for either side. It's not going to be comfortable for either side. I don't think it's a 28-20 because Michigan scored 2 touchdowns in the final 5 minutes of the game or anything like that. I think Michigan just doesn't match up super well with Alabama, who can do some things offensively that, whether if they want to be physical up front, they can. If they want to be quote unquote finesse and chuck it around a little bit, they can do that too. They can score quickly. They can also extend drives and are not afraid to go for it on 4th and short or 4th and whatever, depending on the field position. I think Michigan will struggle to get Alabama off the field at times. I don't think Alabama's going to have a bunch of quick strike, get rich quick, 1-play, 76-yard touchdown drives. I think they're going to have like some 6-play, 61-yard touchdown drives, etc. I think there's a field position battle to ensue today, but I think when push comes to shove, Alabama's just a little bit better than Michigan, and I think they're just a little bit better on the scoreboard at the end of the night. So give me Alabama 28-20 over Michigan. And then you get to the second college football playoff semifinal between Texas and Washington, and I find it fascinating because there are 2 very, very good offenses. Very good offenses. And when you get to that point, it's either a like, okay, you're going to get just a flat out shootout, right? Like it's going to be an unreal offensive explosion, or because you thought it was going to be an offensive explosion, the defenses felt disrespected or whatever, they show up to play, or you get cocky thinking that you're going to be able to just do whatever you want and you make a mistake here or there, and that mistake can be the difference in the game. I think it's a shootout. I think it's a 100%. There are points galore, and I think that's really fun because I don't know how many people think that the winner of the late game has a shot to win the title. I think that the majority of folks believe that the Michigan-Georgia winner is the favorite in a couple of Mondays. That's what I think the prevailing thought is that like, okay, Michigan-Alabama is a national title game, and Texas-Washington is the decider of who gets to play in that game. And I like the idea that Texas or Washington has a chance to play for the national championship. Like I like that the kind of 2 titans of Michigan and Alabama go at it. And then I don't think it's necessarily fair to call Texas or Washington an underdog, but one of them is going to be an underdog in the national title game. I just wonder what the deciding factor is. Washington has been battle tested. They have played in tight games, and you can call that a good thing. You can call that a bad thing, depending on how you want to look at it. But they have played I'm not going to say like a murderer's row schedule or anything like that, but they've had some tough games against pretty good teams on their schedule. And that's not to say Texas hasn't had the same. They went on the road and beat Alabama somewhat soundly. But it's been a hot second since Texas has really been super challenged by a team at a caliber of Washington. I think it's a shootout. I think it's a points galore. Michael Penix Jr. throws for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, and Quinn Ewers throws for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. And whoever makes a mistake first, whoever turns the ball over, or whoever is able to steal a possession, whether it's an onside kick or a muffed punt or a missed field goal or whatever, that's what I think the difference is in the game, is you get to whoever makes the first mistake is the one that pays the most dearly for it. And it's one of those games where you talk about chasing points, right? Where every point is going to matter. Therefore, you should kick a field goal on 4th and 4 from their 9-yard line instead of try to go for it. I think it's one of those games where it's every point matters, and however many points you can get matters. So you might see somebody take a chance early of, we should kick the field goal here, but the difference between 3 points and 6 points or 3 points and 7 points is going to be so astronomical in this game, I can't take the chance to only settle for 3 points. And then the game is going to hinge on some of those plays. But I think it's an absolute shootout. I think it's points galore. I think it's like Texas 48, Washington 42. And whoever either throws an inopportune interception or fumbles or muffs a kick, onside kick, however you can steal a possession, I think it's going to be important to do that in the late game. So I got Alabama playing Texas in a rematch in the national championship game, and we'll talk about whether that prediction comes to fruition or not in the coming days and weeks. But that's what I think happens today. I think Alabama beats Michigan in a kind of low-scoring, slug-it-out 28-20 game, and then I think Texas beats Washington in a all-timer that you look at later down the line and say, man, if Michael Penix Jr. hadn't thrown that interception or that ball hadn't got tipped or whatever, what might have been? And those are the kind of worst losses. Those are the kind of worst big-time games that you have those situations where like, oh, man. But I think that's what happens today in the college football playoff semifinals. So that'll do it for today's episode. We'll recap the semifinals tomorrow right here on the Daily Huddle. Make sure you are subscribed to the Saturday Glory YouTube channel. Make sure you're getting all that great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. We're back at it tomorrow, recapping the college football playoff semifinals. Looking forward to doing it. We'll see you then here on the Daily Huddle with Saturday Glory.